emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 386.EC0804, certificate number 24409. The Duke of Anjou.
What would you describe? How would you describe the protests of a couple of months ago? How is history going to remember them? What are the? Are they going to be called the Revolution of 2020?
It's too soon to say.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we're still kind of enmeshed. I've been calling them police riots just to get people mad at me on Twitter.
Let's call it that. The police riots of 2020. I don't know if you saw, but during the police riots, at one point in Louisville, Kentucky, a protester jumped up on the statue of Louis XVI, Louis Soissons.
The namesake of the city?
Yeah.
Wait, Louisville is named for Louis XVI, beheaded in the French Revolution. That's interesting.
I believe it is interesting. I believe that's true.
You believe it's interesting?
I believe it's interesting.
It's one of my core beliefs, that this is interesting.
A protester jumped up and broke off the right hand of the statue of Louis XVI.
I feel like head would be better.
Jumped down into the crowd. It's a giant hand. I mean, it's a stone hand as big as your head.
What's it made of that you can just pop it off? Is it made out of toffee?
That's a good question. Whether it's terracotta or stone.
If it's a bronze, you're not going to be able to
No, it's not a bronze. It's probably masonry, given how easily it came off.
But the guy just popped off the hand.
Just popped off the hand and ran away, and as he would.
No, I can understand how this is targeting a lot of Confederate statues,
right?
Because of the the racial element in the police action that led to the protest,
right?
But it's not clear what the anti-French sentiment or the
in the video,
anti-Bourbon feeling.
In the video, it is unclear, and it appears to me at least that he meant to just grab the hand and swing on it, and then the hand broke off, and so he just jumped down into the crowd and presumably kept the hand, as he would. I would too.
Do you think he was looting for the hand?
I don't think. I think this
I'm hoping to get a flat screen TV and the right hand of King Louis XVI.
I believe, like most of the protests during the police riots of 2020, this was a peaceful protest, and the statue was just the highest thing you could climb on, and then he grabbed the hand. The hand came off. A lot of times when you're in a situation like that, you improvise.
Do you think King Louis had one of those prank hands?
And then his real hand comes out of his
baggy overcoat.
In the way I used to decorate my house, a giant masonry hand of Louis XVI would have fit right perfectly on my mantle.
What are some of the things you would have done? You would just put it on your mantle?
I think so. I'd put it there, and people would say, "What the heck is that?" And I'd go, "Oh, let me tell you the story."
I mean, you could put something in it. I don't know what the hand is doing, but I mean, it's obviously not big enough to be one of those chairs that cups your buttocks that looks like a hand.
I think this hand is big enough that it could be cradling a basketball.
Oh.
It could hold a globe, but of the world as it appeared in 1780.
That's
Look at that.
It could hold a cocktail shaker. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else you would put in it. You could.
The skull of Yorick. Just really like put a spin on it.
But if it's an oversized hand, it would just look like a very small skull.
That would be even weirder, right?
Just a guy holding a little person skull.
Or get a giant skull, the giant skull of Yorick. See, this is the kind of stuff I used to put on my mantle in order to entice people into my web of storytelling and bamboozling, and then I would kill them in the basement.
I feel like
drink their blood.
If we're going to get out the guillotines for the rich,
the
guillotines for the rich.
Let's say we are. Here's
what
why
could go wrong.
Here's why you can't guillotine the rich.
Here's why you can't guillotine the rich. Then the hand of a guillotined guy would be a potent symbol.
Well, there are an awful lot of those, aren't there? Relics of the great kings and religious figures. Why not? But this isn't really his hand. This is just the hand of a statue.
It's the closest thing we have to his hand in America, because we do not have a lot of statues of French kings here in the colonies.
Right. And the thing is that this at the time of this recording remains unresolved, because there are predictably people that were offended by breaking the hand off of this statue. And I think most prominently, a tweet appeared. As tweets do, a tweet appeared.
Suddenly, a wild tweet appears
from someone who's been on my list of omnibus topics from the very beginning. When was the first time I told you about the topic of today's show?
We were like 5 or 10 shows in.
Yeah, and I was like, I've got a great idea.
Was it Marilyn Vassavant? Did she tweet about this?
No, in fact, it was the man himself, Louis de Bourbon, Duc d'Anjou, who is...
He's the Duke of Anjou.
The Duke of Anjou.
He eats au jus.
He styles himself Duc d'Anjou in French.
He styles himself.
Duc d'Anjou.
We all have to style ourselves lately. All the salons are closed.
We do. I style myself with Brill cream.
But you say that as if maybe no one else thinks he should be so styled.
There are lots of people who believe he should be thusly styled. There are lots of people who do not believe he should be thusly styled, as I'll explain in a moment.
But look, if we're letting people choose their own pronouns, it goes without saying they should be allowed to choose their own aristocratic titles.
Well, in that case, I am John Roderick, retired director of the Central Intelligence Agency.
It can only be
former U.S. Senator from the state of Alaska.
I feel like they can only be royalist titles. You can't redo a resume.
Oh,
you just have to say I'm the Earl of Burien.
Sure. The Duke of Normandy Park. That's a great title.
The Duke of Normandy Park. That should be your next record.
I know. I should get were I to be called the Duke of Normandy Park, I believe I should have a lowrider Cadillac. Also be living in a kind of a post-apocalyptic city.
I wonder if Normandy actually has dukes.
Well, the Duke de Normandy?
Probably.
Well,
right? If I understand, I mean, in England, cities are now assigned more or less randomly. You just become the Duke of Cambridge because there wasn't one.
There's a certain amount of that. There's a certain amount of we need to find a title for this person, so we're going to resurrect a duke that hasn't been around in 600 years.
And it's historical accident now, for example, that the heir apparent to the oldest son of the reigning British monarch is the Prince of Wales. There's really no connection with Wales, and in fact, Wales sometimes protests when the king shows. Like remember when they shipped off Prince Charles to go to Wales for one episode? I mean, for 6 months, so that he could
learn a little Welsh,
get in touch with his Welsh roots. It's just some accident of history that he even has that in his name, but he has to pretend he cares now about Welsh people.
What's interesting is that the Queen of England has not invested anyone in a hereditary dukedom in many, 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 many years.
Just because she's so busy?
No, I'm not even sure that Elizabeth II has ever done it. I think that the last time that a royal said, you are now the Duke of Marlborough or whatever, and that entitles you to estates and land. I mean, to give someone a hereditary title also implies that you're giving them a royal grant of land and money and income and
deer and a certain number of casks of ale a year.
And serfs. You're going to have to get some serfs, right? And so since the royal family doesn't really have that power anymore. I mean, they could, but they
would run out of land and deer and serfs very quickly.
There has to be some land and deer and serfs that aren't currently being used by regular people.
But in the day that would continue to through your lineage.
Sure. I mean, all the dukes that we know now are dukes because at some point some monarch said, I'm going to give you all of Herefordshire and do with it what you will. Because it needs a ruler, because what are we going to do? Just have serfs running around making their own decisions?
So does the queen actually create any new titles that are just kind of honorary for lifetime only?
Yeah. In fact, almost all of them are. And even, I mean, when people get, when the Duke of Cambridgeshire or whatever, when some royal gets granted a dukedom, a lot of times they're just trying to figure out a way to describe the relationship. Like, technically he's the grandson of the queen, so he's got to have something. It's got to sound good. It's got to be a good title, but we don't have any like actual titles with power lying around. So, and any title that a queen gives you today is, it only lasts the course of your life. She's not giving away any hereditary titles anymore. So if you're knighted or granted some royal title, your kid doesn't get it.
Which is true of most titles in our country too. Like if I win an American Music Award,
right,
my kid does not become an American Music Award winner at my death.
That's true. If I won a Medal of Honor or a Presidential Medal of Freedom, it would not confer to my child.
No. That's why Jesse Owens sold off all his gold medals. He knew his kids weren't going to become gold medalists.
Right. Sure. What good is a gold medal?
Nothing. Sits on your mantle in a giant bourbon hand.
That's right. But in the case of royal families, of course, this stuff and the fact that there aren't new ones probably makes the old ones seem even better.
It's become a trope in culture that there's something cool about discovering that it's a child fantasy that you might actually be the lost prince of something, the end of a dynasty.
My whole childhood, I imagined that someone was going to knock on the door someone was going to ride a white horse up to the door and say,
Coach and four.
Turns out you are the Duc d'Anjou.
I thought that too. Why do kids even think that? Where is that even coming from?
There's a kind of magical, and I think in the United States too, a magical sense that those of us of European lineage maybe are, the first time you hear like, oh, maybe you're related to some ancient royal family, and you hear the idea that, that through some paperwork found in a vault that Jodie Foster is actually the Duchess of Anjou and inherits a castle. It just feels like a version of winning the lottery, but one that also grants you authority. You're not just rich.
Is that the plot of the movie Candleshoe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where that came from.
Sorry.
I use Princess Diaries for that reference.
Yeah, no. A Candleshoe is how far I have to go back.
Candleshoe is on Disney Plus.
Candleshoe, I remember being very exciting, but I've been watching a lot of 70s movies with my daughter, and they are all really troubling. Not just problematic, but like troubling.
You've been watching the Disney Plus 70s movies?
We watched the original Freaky Friday. I'm a Jodie Foster fan, but we watched The Revenge of the Pink Panther.
That's not on Disney Plus.
Not on Disney Plus, but we watched, what are some of the other ones? Herbie the Love Bug. The thing about a lot of those old movies is that all of the parents are either drunks or very neglectful. There's a lot of just like what we would call child abuse. That's a kind of, we watched Annie, and it's brutal. We're watching Anne of Green Gables. You didn't tell me, Ken. We talk about Anne of Green Gables all the time. I'd never seen it. You didn't tell me it was a freaking horror show. Anne is absolutely... Watching Anne of Green Gables, I'm like, I'm sitting down to watch an hour of a little girl getting brutalized by every single person in her life.
She's an orphan. That's what happens to fictional orphans. You thought because it was Canada, they were going to be nice to her.
Well, and I'm watching it with my daughter and her mother, and they're both like, there's something, I think, there's something about women watching other women get brutalized where they're like, just chomping at the popcorn watching Anne just get rejected by everybody. And I'm like...
It's the secret of true crime podcasting.
This is really hurting my feelings.
It's affluent, safe women who like to hear about some other woman getting cut into pieces in a trunk.
I had to go upstairs and cry in my pillow, and I came back down and was like, why are you still watching this? And they both looked up at me like, are you kidding? This is amazing. And it's a great show, but
you don't have the constitution for, for Anne of Green Gables.
No, it hurt. And I sat down thinking this was going to be like a Little House on the Prairie, and Anne of Green Gables was going to be out gathering flowers and maybe see a fox or something. I didn't realize that she was going to have her hand, have some kids dangling a rat under her nose.
Well, maybe at the end she'll turn out to be the lost princess of Ruritania or something.
So,
you never know.
The Louis de Bourbon, Duc d'Anjou, however, has a pretty good sense of where he belongs in the big picture.
And you mentioned his tweet. He was mad at the desecration?
Wait, his tweet reads as follows. As the heir of hashtag Louis XVI.
Hashtag Louis XVI.
I mean, it's hashtag Louis the 16th, but he would say Louis XVI. And attached to the defense of his memory. He's attached to the defense of his memory.
I can see how you would defend his memory.
Yes.
I'm not sure why you would attach yourself to such a defense.
Well, it's some kind of thing. I do hope that the damage will be repaired and that the statue will be restored. I already thank the capitalized authorities for the measures they will take for that. Hashtag Louisville protests, hashtag Kentucky.
Is that how you found this, by looking up hashtag Kentucky? Or were you looking up hashtag Louis Says?
No, hashtag Kentucky is always, it's like one of my search terms. He does not say hashtag Black Lives Matter, which turns out was
not an accident,
prescient of him, and also not an accident.
Well, if he's capitalizing authorities,
yeah.
I mean, I just associate that with fascism now.
Well, of
because
course.
Trump's always capitalizing country or responsibility or strong or whatever.
He doesn't really know how capitalization works.
No one's walked him through it.
But Louis de Bourbon, Duc d'Anjou, is the pretender to the throne of France.
France does not have a throne.
France does not have a throne. Like so many European nations, no longer has a throne, but there are people who wish that it were not so.
And in his case, wishes specifically that the throne existed and his butt were in it.
Well, so it's not clear to me in avidly following Prince Louis how much he really wants the throne of France. It seems to me that the throne of France, were you to reinstate the King of France, it would sure be a lot of work.
Well, he's got an out. He can say, I am the legitimate heir.
Yes.
But there is no throne. I'm not a monarchist.
Precisement.
So if there were a throne, I just want you guys to know, it would be me.
I don't think he would say he's not a monarchist. The thing about Louis de Bourbon is that he is the last in the line. How do I not say the last? Because he's not the last, but the French throne is one, or was one, of the oldest in Europe. And it represented, this is insane to think about, but it represented an unbroken line of succession from Hugh Capet.
Isn't that like in 900?
987.
Jeez.
There was an unbroken line of succession from then until 1792 and the French Revolution.
Did France go nuts in 1987 when it was the 1000th anniversary of their monarchy?
In 1980,
I don't know what was going on in France in 1987. I mean, they're listening to the Whitney Houston record.
The thing is, I think it was 1989.
Well, that would have been
the 200th anniversary of the storming of the Bastille or whatever.
Yes.
What is the French Independence Day? It's July 14th.
Yeah, Bastille Day.
Bastille Day. Yeah. So that was 89. I was there for that, and there were a lot of fireworks.
But I'm just saying, you don't get to have a 1,000-year anniversary very often. And did they?
Well, unfortunately,
did they do that? Were they dancing in the streets to Starship?
I wasn't there in 1987, but unfortunately, the line did not continue unbroken because they deposed and eliminated the royal family not once, not twice, but as many times as you could count, because the House of Bourbon, the Capets, were reinstated after the 100 Days, after Napoleon was sent packing. Well, the first time he was sent packing, and then when he came back, then there was that 100-day period where there wasn't a king on the throne, and then they reinstated it again. So, in fact, the last French king lasted until 1848.
But there were no. There's no, like an analog to the English thing where they ran out of they ran out of
heirs,
tutors, and had to start importing stewards, and then they ran out of stewards and had to get some Dutch people in.
Oh boy, is there.
Oh, it's complicated.
I don't believe that you could have an unbroken line of succession from 987 to 1792 without a little bit of fudging.
There's some asterisks.
And what ends up happening is that the first son dies, and then the second son dies. And so the brother, every succession it's sort of like if the president dies, the vice president takes over, and then the secretary of state and whatnot.
And eventually you get to Prince Harry.
And so anytime you see a European royal, or really any kind of royal, if they are at all related at any distance from Queen Victoria, it's one of the things that European royals do is mention where they are in the line of succession for the English throne.
They know their number?
Yeah.
It's like knowing what number of Microsoft IPO stock you were?
Yeah, and I think Louis de Bourbon is a great-great-great-grandson of Queen Victoria, and so is 197th in line for the throne of England also.
So things really are going to have to go his way with that one.
There would have to, I think, be some kind of nuclear explosion in all the major European cities, and he would have to be in the Dominican Republic.
They'd have to put all the people together at some point and forget to have a designated survivor.
Yeah, right. They'd have a huge bash where all the royals were there, and Louis de Bourbon would not be invited. And so, for some reason.
And the plane crashes in the Caribbean.
That's right.
This is the plot of King Ralph.
Even trying to study the line that would lead us to our contemporary here, the Duc d'Anjou, to just connect him back to the last French king
in the 1840s,
is so impossible. So impossibly complex that it really caused me to pull my hair out, because it seems like it should be exceedingly simple. Part of the problem is that every other person in this family is either named Louis or Henri, but also the royal houses of all the different European nations are intertwined. People marry one another's daughters, sisters, cousins. There's a lot of a lot of people assume royal titles where they are collecting titles both from their mother and father's families, and in a lot of cases they are both the duke and the prince of the same thing because because they're their own grandpa. So that also kind of garbles the water.
And did lines peter out, or is he a direct descendant of the last, or is he of the last Bourbon king, or is he some kind of cousin or great nephew?
Well, it depends on what you mean by direct descendant. So in ye olden Frankish times, and I'm talking about a long time before the Capets, now in the year 500, there was instituted what's called the Salic Law.
We have what is called in Louisiana the Salic Law.
It's the Salic Law.
It's Marlon Brando.
My son, he speaks when he should listen.
I don't think it's God called that. I'm pretty sure it's Streetcar. But okay, go on.
I want you should do me a favor. The Salic Law the Salic Law had a lot of like small laws, but King Clovis put forth.
This is why they're all named Louis and Henri now, because otherwise you get embarrassing names like Clovis.
Oh my God, King Clovis would be a great name for a cat. King Clovis, Salic Law was kind of like Norman law. It was in its moment kind of like a clarifying law that straightened out a lot of questions that people had. And one of those questions was, how do royal families, how does a title succeed from one generation to the next? And Salic Law was the one that said that a royal line is only going to descend through the male line. It was just the style of the time.
It's not firstborn. It's firstborn male.
Firstborn male, right. So you could have 5 daughters and then a son, and the son is going to be the one that inherits the crown. And the Salic Law, through the Franks, then through the Germans and Holy Roman Empire, and it became kind of the dominant way of thinking in the royal houses of Europe. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of nations of the world that don't follow Salic Law.
And United States, for example.
The United States. Thailand.
That's why Ivanka won't be president.
Although Thailand, I don't know. But, the Queen, like England at some point, decided that the Salic Law didn't apply.
It's fairly recent, I think, the English idea that the crown would not pass to
the son.
Younger sons before older daughters.
Yeah. And that's true in a lot of the European families, because and when we talked about this very recently in our German telegrams episode, you get into matters of diplomacy, and in particular the competition between the Habsburgs and the Hohenzollerns and the Bourbons for a balance of power in Europe meant that you weren't always going to be able to put the person with the most legitimate claim, because that person would disturb the delicate balance of nations.
Oh, interesting. You have to have some compromise candidate so that gets legitimized, even though on paper there's people ahead of him.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is that you'll have 3 different people with a pretty legitimate claim. And the way that it gets decided is whose great-grandmother held her title the longest, or whose great-grandmother, like right now in European royalty, seniority is determined by who has been on the throne the longest. So if you got all the royals together from around the world, I think the Emperor of Japan would... I guess Queen Elizabeth's been on the throne a lot longer.
Gotta be Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth would be first, but like the Emperor of Japan would be...
And what is this? Who gets served the soup first?
Yeah, right. Like who walks in first, or who's on top of the bill? Who goes after the puppet show and who goes before the puppet show?
There's a bill. I'm looking at the list right now of the longest reigning monarchs. And for a long time, it was the King of Thailand, but
right.
He passed away a few years ago. And I think there was a Swazi king at some point, but now he's gone as well.
So is it Elizabeth at the top?
It is Elizabeth.
I mean, it would be tough to reign longer unless you'd taken the throne at the age of 4.
Like, she's near all time. In 2 years, she will pass Johann II of Liechtenstein, who reigned between 1858 and 1829.
High five.
And then a month later, she will...
1858 and 1929.
Sorry, 1929, yes. He did not travel back in time. And then in a month after that, sometime in 2022, she will pass the recently deceased king of Thailand. And then in about 2024, she will become the all-time champion if she can outlive Louis XIV, who lasted so long that I think his great-grandson actually succeeded him on the throne of France.
Well, Louis XIV absolutely plays a role in our story because Louis XIV is the ancestor that connects Louis de Bourbon, Duc d'Anjou, to the throne of France. And that is because Louis XIV's long reign set in motion some confusing questions.
Yeah, if somebody refuses to die, all the people who thought they were successors are going to start dying one by one.
Well, there's that, and also there became a there became a difficulty. How do I say that? Not phrased in the passive voice. There became a difficulty.
By the way, the Sultan of Brunei is currently in second place.
Is that right?
52 and a half years.
The Sultan of Brunei.
Who would have thought? And Elizabeth's on this list so many times because she's also the head of state of St. Vincent and Grenadines and Belize and New Zealand. So she's on this list 30 times. I would clean this up a little.
So Louis XIV, his eldest son, the Grand Dauphin, and his other sons, Philip and Charles, all watched their father as he became the longest-lived monarch and remaining until this day, reign for 72 years and 100 days.
Jeez.
Plus or minus. And so a lot went on during that era, the result of which being that when he died, the new king of France, styled Louis XV, was actually his great-grandson. And he ascended to the throne at the age of 5. So when you think of Louis XIV and then you think of Louis XV, you think, oh, it must have been, like his oldest son. But in fact, it was his great-grandson.
His dad must have died young if he's taken the throne at 5.
Well, so there was a lot of dying young, but also during this period, there became, there I am again with the passive voice. The King of Spain, Charles III, died without an heir. And in dying without an heir, he turned to his relatives, which is to say the many, many other royal families of Europe.
Cousins and whatnot.
Cousins and cousins of daughters of cousins, and tried to appoint to the throne of Spain one of the Bourbon sons of the Sun King, Louis XIV. And they had to, each in their sort of time, like the Grand Dauphin could not accept the crown of Spain because the crown of France was a bigger, better prize.
He could have.
He could have. But he passed on the kingdom of Spain, and it was Philip, who was a younger son of the Dauphin. So the Dauphin had several kids, and his oldest son, Louis, the Duke of Burgundy, also could have taken the throne of Spain, but also passed.
He's still holding out.
He's still holding out. He believes that he is, the grandson of Louis XIV. He's in line.
Well, also he lives in France, presumably.
Right.
It would be getting shipped overseas.
It happened, though. I mean,
sure. If
you think about how long the British royal family spoke German in the house.
Think about all of poor Henry VIII's wives getting shipped in from Spain and Germany and whatnot.
So what you ended up with was Philip V, King of Spain, was actually a younger son of Louis the Dauphin, who Louis himself, it ended up that the throne of France went to his grandson.
It's a good deal for him because he knows he's never getting the French throne.
But the problem with that is that the actual situation then in France starts to veer away from a situation where there's a clear line of succession.
They changed the rules
through the Capets, and they changed the rules a little bit. And during this time also, there's a lot of sort of pushing back against Salic law a desire to start being able to have your children inherit, even if it's an eldest daughter.
Have you ever thought that maybe if it's only for sons, it should be called phallic law?
I had never thought that.
What if it's only for your son with a mustache and it's called Selleck law?
I also had never, ever thought that. I would never. I'm trying right now to get it out of my brain so I never think it again.
It's not a great basis for government because you could, somebody could shave a mustache and then suddenly they'd be ineligible for the throne.
Or grow a mustache
and suddenly
be the only one that could take over the throne. Like right now, if there were a throne in dispute between you and I would be the natural candidate.
And it's not even something I could work on because my mustache would like, even with a few months to work on it, my mustache wouldn't be ready to go.
That's one of the problems.
It's not regal.
One of the problems I've had in recent weeks where I've taken considerable issue with the American police departments, police unions, policing in general. I've been pretty vocal and active in challenging police power. But unfortunately, I look like the sheriff of a Western mountain town and have a sheriff's mustache and just carry myself like a sheriff. And so
everyone, no matter what you say, everyone assumes you're complaining about Antifa coming into town to burn down the Applebee's.
The problem is I don't look like a cop. Cops don't look like me anymore. It's just small, like I look like the sheriff of Vale. and that's not a bad thing. I look like an old-timey cop. And I wish cops looked more like me now. It'd be a better world.
You don't have any Punisher tattoos.
Oh.
You're not doing white power signs.
I don't have a utility belt of any kind. I've never, ever, ever gotten a high and tight haircut unless I am accidentally cutting my hair and I screw up.
Unfortunately, now all cops look like me.
Oh, that's right. They do.
Like, what was the year when cops stopped looking like you and started looking like me? I'm more of a John than a Ponch.
Oh, no. But at the same time, this kind of kicked off, or the question of this succession. And because Louis XV didn't immediately succeed from Louis XIV, there was some...
He's only 5. They had to wait for him to be potty trained?
Well, the problem of this situation, I mean, as the Sun King lay kind of in his on his deathbed, he watched the following happen. The Dauphin, his oldest son, died.
While he was on his deathbed?
While he, in the last few years of his life. He died in 1711. And Louis
XIV...
XIV...
stealing focus.
He died 4 years, I guess, before his dad. Then a year after that, the Duke of Burgundy, who was the eldest of the Dauphin's sons...
So his grandson.
Who was then heir, right? Yeah. Who became heir, also died. And then Burgundy's oldest son, the Duke of Brittany, also named Louis, then died. All of this happened as Louis XIV was...
coughing and
also being very old and
having
dying.
Doctors look at his poop,
which is how the Duke of Anjou became then the further Louis became the new King of Spain as Louis XV. But the problem was that at the point at which Philip V was offered the throne of Spain, and Philip V being like a son of the Duke of Burgundy, who was the son of the Grand Dauphin. What that created, and he was granted that because King Charles II did not have an heir, and Charles II was something like his mother's brother's sister-in-law,
some shoestring relative.
What that created in Europe was a tremendously was an imbalance of power, which meant that now the Bourbon family was going to be on the throne of Spain and France, which was an intolerable political situation in Europe. And it sparked the War of Spanish Succession, which we referenced a little bit in our German Telegram.
And that was the whole idea, to get the Bourbons out of Spain, because it's like when a sports league has too many like good teams in one division or whatever.
You got to bounce one. You got to get one out.
You need an expansion draft or something. John, we were just talking about how you and I don't even have jobs, and yet we still have to do Zoom calls all the time nowadays.
Yeah, and I when people talk to me on Zoom, I find my hand goes over to the volume knob and just gradually inches it down lower and
All
lower.
the way?
Not all the way, but just so their voices are these tiny little whispers, because I don't have the capacity to hear people
To hear people's thoughts and needs?
No, and also the sounds are bad. You know, they're talking into their computers. I'm just like, this could always be quiet.
Well, imagine how it would be if you and I had desk jobs and we had to have morning staff meetings and, like, God forbid, a weekly Zoom happy hour.
I see it because there's a person in my household who starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and is on Zoom calls until 6 o'clock at night every single day. I can't believe it. It's unfathomable. And she seems to just do it with no complaints.
There's got to be a better way.
Ken, do you have some insight into this? Is
I
there
do.
a better way?
I want to demonstrate my new invention, water cooler. It's not my invention. I want to tell you about water cooler trivia.
Oh, I thought you were about to say water torture trivia. And
Yeah.
I was going to be very into it.
Just torture your friends until they stop calling you. No, if your workplace is having, boring, dreaded Zoom get-togethers, why not replace it with a trivia night? Was the idea that these three pub trivia nerds had.
Instead of these terrible cocktail parties where everybody sits with a little umbrella in there.
You need structure. You need a little bit of structure. And so Water Cooler Trivia provides these weekly trivia contests that you can customize for your organization. They'll send you, you can personalize the categories and the difficulty, or
what a good idea.
Or even have them write stuff for your, make fun of the guy in HR category.
But be careful making fun of any of your coworkers, because that HR is going to get involved if it's too much fun.
Yeah, don't make fun of HR. Make fun of somebody who is going to get fired anyway. So, and I think people really like this. The fact that there's, I like trivia. Did you know that about me?
Yeah, I did know that about you, but other people, like normal people, love trivia, and they don't professionalize it and turn it into a thing, hopefully, that makes them super arrogant for the rest of their lives.
It's just hitting a wiffle ball around for them, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, even if, there's no prize, but there's the prize of, like, having something in your head come in handy in real life,
right,
or being surprised when a coworker knows a hard answer or tells a fun story about how she learned it.
It's a bonding experience for a lot of people.
It really is. And it's super easy to get started with water cooler trivia. It takes under 20 seconds to start, and then you start up, and then you get a weekly quiz.
Oh, wow. It's just on demand.
It's on demand over the internet. And we have a special deal for listeners of Omnos that would like to try out water cooler trivia.
This is really targeted advertising. Well done.
Yeah, I can't believe these guys found a podcast hosted by one guy who's sick of Zoom calls.
Yes.
And one guy who likes trivia.
We cover both ends.
So you can try this out with no risk whatsoever, because at watercoolertrivia.com/omnibus, you'll get 4 weeks completely free.
Oh, dang.
You don't even have to put in a credit card number. Try it out with your team and see if they like that better than the last awful Zoom call.
That's a fantastic idea, and I'm actually going to recommend this to my domestic partner who's upstairs on a Zoom call right this minute. I'm going to say watercoolertrivia.com/omnibus.
Go interrupt her now during the call. She'll love it.
I'm going to pound on the ceiling with a broom. Philip did become Philip V of Spain, and then Philip begat Charles III
of Spain.
How
do you decide when you're going to say Charles III or Charles III? Because you go back and forth.
I really don't have... Well, now, wait a minute. I think that Philip begat Louis I of Spain.
And he actually, even though it's not Louis, he's French, or it's in Spain, so it's Luis.
Luis, right?
Hola.
Even though it's even though at this point it's a French throne, or a French, it's a French family. It's a Spanish throne.
It's got to be a bummer in Spain. Do you think he even spoke any Spanish?
Maybe not at first, but French was a diplomatic language in the royal houses of a lot of European nations at the time. Who knows what they spoke?
Maybe they thought it was great. Oh, the king speaks French. This is the classiest we've ever had.
Nobody spoke English. Thank God. I can go on and on. Let me just read you some of my notes. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah.
This is what I've been hearing for 20 minutes.
One of the major problems was if you took a throne, you often were asked to renounce your rights to another throne.
Sure.
So
exclusivity.
When Philip V, as a member of the House of Bourbon, took the Spanish throne, he renounced his the right of his children to ever succeed to the French throne, in the hopes that you keep the two sides apart.
Yeah.
At one point, during the War of Spanish Succession, it was sort of put forward that the Archduke Charles, who ended up becoming the Holy Roman Emperor, had a better claim to the Spanish throne because of some question of how old his grandmother was, and it ended up that Philip had a better claim. Because he was grassy and wanted wear.
That's the thing I know about Philip. He's grassy and wanted wear.
But the Austrians said that he had renounced his right, but he renounced his rights. But the French claimed that was based on the idea that that his grandmother had paid a dowry. Or a dowry had been paid on behalf of his grandmother, and so although she had renounced her rights, the renunciation was invalid because the dowry had never been paid.
I gotta say, this is still better than the Electoral College.
And all of this, I think after Philip had been king for a long time in Spain, he abdicated to his son Louis, who was supposed to kind of the abdication was going to spare some of the complications of the Bourbon, Huguenot Capet,
all the complexity and job search that goes on,
the Capulets and the Romulans. But then, unfortunately, his son Louis died only 7 months later, and Philip had to regain the throne. And ended up also holding holding a European throne for a really long time.
The Spanish throne for decades and decades.
He was on the Spanish throne 2 separate times, but
like Grover Cleveland.
From 1700 to 1724. Then Louis was there for 7 months, and then from 1724 to 1746. So 2 separate, really long reigns.
That's how you know you picked the wrong guy to abdicate to. If they call you back out of retirement, they pull you back in.
Anyway, from there, the lines of the Spanish and French thrones go all kooky-wawa. And of course, when Napoleon enters into the equation, like he deposes the king of Spain, he deposes the king of France. Well, the revolution does first, right? The revolution executes Louis the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette had 3 kids, and their oldest son died. Their youngest son, or their younger son, who would have been heir to the throne, went through a kind of suffering like you would not believe possible.
Like Anne of Green Gables style?
Yes, although worse. Louis the 17th was kind of kept as a prisoner by the revolution. Not sure quite what to do with him. They went through a period where they really wanted the story to be that he was a victim of abuse from Marie Antoinette and the royal family, because they wanted him to delegitimize his parents by kind of testifying against them that they had sexually assaulted him. There was a lot of like rumor about him having been misused, and in particular, like used as misused in the basement of a pizza parlor. And in the course of his, short and miserable life, they kept him in a cage. They sort of tortured him in a lot of ways that feel pretty brutal. And then this almost would qualify as an omnibus episode in itself. When he died, it was the tradition of the French family to cut the heart out of royals and keep it separately, bury their body, but keep their heart
on your mantelpiece
in a little vessel. And so the autopsy doctor, kind of violating the revolutionary code, secretly cut out the heart of Louis XVII, Louis Charles.
The doctor's a royalist.
And smuggled it out. And then the heart of this little boy became a thing that variously was kept as a treasure, sort of a royalist artifact. Other times, it sort of for a while got lost. At one point, someone found it. Someone kept it in a bottle of wine for a while, and then it was sitting on a mantelpiece. Someone found it, put it in a crystal goblet. Then for a little bit, it was in a sow's ear and a silk.
Buried with a golden rabbit in Sussex.
So much so that, of course, there was a lot of question about whether it was really his heart.
Well, isn't there a lot of question about whether that was really him who died? Are we going to get into that? Like it could have been a double, right?
There was. It was. So that was the sort of the Romanov princess scandal of the 19th century.
Yeah.
That perhaps little Louis Charles had been spirited away and had not died in his miserable little prison cell. And there were a couple pretty convincing pretenders to the French throne then, which because that French throne was reinstated, those contenders or those pretenders
would have been the king.
Would have actually been the king during the mid-19th century.
Did you know that John James Audubon, bird painter extraordinaire, was one of the candidates who got tossed around just because he happened to have been born in France at the same time and his parentage was a little confusing. So
yeah, there was a claimant that was actually a Native American. There was one of them had a claim because they were born in France at the time, and they were at one point shown a picture of the nanny that apparently tortured Louis Charles, and he went into convulsions at seeing the picture, and that was seen as proof that he was.
All you have to do to become king is go into convulsions at the right time.
There were a lot of people vying for the throne, but in very recent years, a DNA sample was taken from the preserved. The still extant preserved heart of Louis Charles, which is now inside of a crystal urn, and they took DNA samples from the family members of the various pretenders, and they discovered that yes, in fact, this is Louis Charles's heart still in this crystal goblet, and he did die when.
It's what you would expect.
Yeah,
I don't believe in switcheroos, and that's for soap operas.
It's a great story, though, the story of that heart bouncing around Western Europe for a while. And I think we've just burned it here.
You got to have heart. Oh, you were going to do it on Omnibus?
Well, I mean, once I got into it, I was like, this is an even better show than this dummy.
This coke-sniffing dummy from Anjou.
Louis Alphonse Gonzalve Victor Emmanuel Marc de Bourbon. That we're talking about.
Should we go backwards from him? Like how good do you think his claim is?
So here's the line that he claims the succession.
I'm looking at a picture of him and he looks handsome, but he looks kind of dumb.
He's handsome and dumb. He's a contemporary royal, which is to say kind of a playboy. He's a guy that studied economics at a polytechnic school. He works in a bank. There are a lot of royals that get jobs in banking and business in Europe because they're the glad handers, right? I mean, they're probably not in a back room at a terminal making trades.
But it impresses possible new account holders.
Yeah, they have a Windsor knot in their tie, and they take people out to lunch. our man, the Duc d'Anjou, is a cousin of the current King of Spain, and the current King of Spain is not very thrilled about him there. He lives in Spain. He was born in Spain. His father, Prince Alfonso de Bourbon, who also styled himself as the Duke of Anjou, was even more handsome than his son and a real playboy. He was like one of the adjudicators of the FIS, the Fédération Internationale du Ski, and he actually died in a very Kennedy-esque way. He was shushing downhill at was it Vale? I think it was.
This is your jurisdiction. Did you investigate this?
I did. He was on a slope that was closed because they were setting up a downhill racing course, and someone had strung a wire across the course in order to hang the banner that said, "Congratulations, winners."
Mission accomplished.
And he skied into it, and it didn't cut off his head, but it was at Beaver Creek in Colorado, but it lacerated his neck, and he died on the ski slope.
If you think that's Kennedy-esque, I would like you to explain to me what you think happened at Dallas.
He drove through a banner that said, "Congratulations, President Kennedy." So
I mean, that's the problem with being one of these guys, is you think you can just go down whatever hill you want.
Right. Well, but
I'm the second cousin of the King of Spain.
But because he was a ski dignitary,
is that a thing?
There's a
ski dignitary.
There were a group of people that were like, no, he was authorized to be there because not only is he the pretender to the throne of France, but he's also like the chairman of the International Federation.
There's a little circle of ski right-of-way that follows him down the hill.
Somebody said that they were skiing with him, and they were like, "Hey, look out! There's a cable strung across the thing." And he looked over and acknowledged it, like, "Yeah, I see it," and then just skied right into it.
See, that's privilege. That's the ultimate white privilege.
Now, his father was the Infante Jaime, who was the Duke of Segovia. And he was the son of King Alfonso the 13th, who was the last actual legitimate king of Spain.
He was deposed in the Spanish Civil War.
By
Franco, okay.
Largely regarded as the worst king of Spain.
Just because he got overthrown by Franco?
Not just that, but he also, he was the one that kind of...
What he said, etc. instead of etc. What's so awful about him?
About who? King Alfonso the 13th?
Infante Jaime. He was just no good.
Oh, Infante Jaime was just he was a pretender not only to the French throne, but also he was the Prince of Spain during the whole period where there was no Prince of Spain.
One of the goofiest things about Spain is they use infante and infanta for prince and princess.
Prince and princess.
So
it just means baby.
All the royals are named baby. No one puts Infante Jaime in the corner.
And what's very interesting about our hero, the Duc d'Anjou, currently, is that his grandfather is also, or his maternal grandfather is Franco. He married Franco's granddaughter.
Whoa.
Is that right?
Is he just trying to unify?
Or his father married Franco's granddaughter.
Yeah, I think his father did. He is Franco's great grandson.
Yeah, Franco's great grandson, and also descended from the King of Spain, also the King of France. It's all like this. King Alfonso was the last king deposed. His father, King Alfonso II.
I just want to say, you don't happen to marry Franco's granddaughter. That's by design, right?
Well, I mean, you're sitting around. Who do you know, right? Who are your friends?
Franco's granddaughter.
There's a tricky little game that got played here. King Alfonso the 13th was the last king. His father, King Alfonso II, was the son of Francisco de Assis, the Duke of Cadiz.
Wait, Alfonso the 13th's father was Alfonso the II?
I'm sorry, Alfonso the 12th.
Oh, okay.
Alfonso the 12th.
I'm with you. I don't want to erase
Alfonso X.
I don't want to raise 9 Alfonsos.
Alfonso XII was the son of Francisco de Assis, who is an example of a kind of an interesting little familial switcheroo. You see, when we were talking before about the fact that Philip abdicated to his son Louis, who died after 7 months, and then Philip took back over the throne. When he finally died, he was succeeded by his half-brother, Ferdinand VI. And then the line of succession went from Charles III to Charles IV to Ferdinand VII, who was, I think, widely regarded as the worst Spanish king. He was the one that lost all of Spain's American territories, territories in the Americas, and then was overthrown by Napoleon. Charles III was probably, I think, regarded as one of the greatest Spanish kings. Ferdinand, absolutely one of the worst Spanish kings, but what Ferdinand did was instituted a what he called the pragmatic sanction, which ensured the succession of his daughter, Queen Isabella. So he eliminated the Salic law restriction on a woman inheriting the throne. This caused, of course, a lot of problems among the legitimist crowd in Europe about who's, what.
They're changing the rules.
They're changing the rules, and that's why our hero Duc d'Anjou has a lot of people that claim he's not the legitimate heir. But Isabella too did take the throne on the death of her father Ferdinand VII. During that time, she ascended to the throne at a very young age. She became Queen of Spain at the age of 3. And so there was a lot of intrigue in her court among people that were, charged with her regents who were charged with raising her. And during that time,
it's hard to respect a queen who will only eat chicken McNuggets shaped like dinosaurs.
Yeah. King Ferdinand VII's brother, a man by the name of Infante Francisco de Paula, who turned out was a pretty good dude, he conspired to have his oldest son marry
a 3-year-old?
Marry Isabella when she came of age.
So 4.
And that's why the Duc d'Anjou can claim a bloodline through the male to satisfy the
Salic requirement,
the literalists or whatever, because Infante Francisco de Paula would be the eldest brother of the King Ferdinand VII. So at that point, we are back to Louis XIV, and we got back to him from here from the present back, because we had worked from Louis XIV to the Dauphin to King Philip V to Charles III to Charles IV, and then we were at Isabella, and then through Infante Francisco de Paula, we get to Francisco de Assis, the Duke of Cadiz.
Am I wrong that maybe his claim is not that great if it took us such a laborious time to figure it out?
The thing is, in researching all of this, and I'm exhausted from having done it, I realized that this is true of every single royal in the world.
So it's not unique to him.
No. It is an insane truth about royalty that it is it's an incredible shell game. There are people that are their entire career is just tracing not just tracing historical bloodlines, but even present day, trying to figure out who has the most legitimate claim to a defunct throne. And if you go and look around the world, there are dozens and dozens of thrones that no longer exist. The king of Burundi,
Are you saying you're a claimant to the throne of Burundi?
I hope. I haven't looked into it. I want the Mormons to track it down.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, if it just rewards people who go to extraordinary lengths to prove their claim, when they're, the normals are just not going to put in that kind of time. I can't take weeks off from my fake job in a Swiss bank to establish my claim to the throne of Liechtenstein.
Well, like the prince of the Hohenzollern family, who is ostensibly the king of Prussia, he's been suing the German government for decades, trying to reclaim all of his family castles that were taken from him at the end of World War II and all their art. And the German government is pushing back and saying, wasn't your grandfather a Nazi? And he's saying, no, it was the style of the times.
I guess, writing crazy letters to the government in hopes of getting a check is it's not unique to these kind of guys.
But the thing about the Prince of the Hohenzollerns, like he works in a bank somewhere as a guy in a Windsor knot, but he actually owns
a soccer team.
3/4 of the Hohenzollern castle, which who knows what that generates in T-shirts and bottle openers every year.
He can't turn it into condos or anything?
I don't think so. And I think part of that problem is that 1/4 of the castle is owned by the cadet branch of the Hohenzollerns, the Savoys, or the Savoyards, whoever.
But this dope, the Duke of Anjou,
old Duke of Anjou. Let's get back to him.
He thinks he should be king of France.
He is
a post that does not exist.
So there's a whole school of people that believe that what France needs, what Germany needs, what we need in the modern day is a strong constitutional monarch. And because
a symbolic figure that unites the nation, or they want this guy writing laws?
A symbolic figure, but I think contemporary monarchists, as Americans, we're so accustomed to, and I think as just modern liberals, we're accustomed to thinking that the progression away from monarchy and toward participatory democracy is an inevitable one.
And kind of over.
And a historical one and an inevitable one. But, it's extremely recent, really, that all this has happened. 150 years. 1848 was when a lot of the monarchies of Europe went away. But very recently, if you think about the King of Spain, they reinstituted the monarchy as a kind of...
In order to have some kind of stable institution,
right,
that everybody can be on board with because he doesn't do anything too controversial.
Right. He is a post-Franco figurehead of the country, and within Spain, at least, being a conservative Catholic nation, there was enough support at the time to put in a figurehead king that it made sense to do. There are lots of people in France, I'm not going to say more than 20%, but there are plenty of conservative people in France that would love there to be a monarch.
They just want somebody on teacups.
Yeah, the House of Bourbon, and particularly if he's a handsome playboy that, that will give the tabloids some fodder. And so there's actually a competitor who has a competing claim to the throne of France, who's out there right now somewhere, making a, I think that most people agree that Henri d'Orléans, the Count of Paris, who just recently died in 2019, that his claim to the throne is less. But, there's so many different twists and turns.
There's a bunch of these guys.
But
if I was Emmanuel Macron, I would not be quaking in my boots at the thought of any of these guys.
No, although Macron actually said at one point, and it may have been an off-the-cuff remark or he may have been just sort of throwing it out there, but he said at some cocktail party, what France really needs is a king, just to give everybody
It's because he doesn't want to be at that cocktail party. He's like, that way I can be at work. I don't have to go to this thing. It would be, there's a nice bonus, by the way, because if one of these guys, the Count of Paris or the Duke of Anjou, ever did take over the French throne, he also would become co-prince of Andorra.
Right.
Andorra does have a kind of a monarchy that is always split between the French head of state and the Spanish head of state. Currently, I guess King Felipe of Spain and the president of France. So you would also be co-prince of Andorra. That's pretty good. There's nothing like that in the U.S.
The thing is, if you were to become Prince of Andorra, I mean, Andorra is just one giant ski resort, so it would only be a matter of time.
Watch out for those banners. And that concludes the Duke of Anjou. Entry 386.EC0804. Certificate number 24409 in the omnibus. Now, without social media, we never would have seen the Duke of Anjou tweeting bad hashtags about his bad brand. So, thank you, Twitter. I guess John's back on Twitter now. He's at John Roderick.
Not anymore. I hate it so much.
You had a week of finding it energizing you, and
there was a week during the very beginning of the police riots of 2020, where Twitter became very focused and clear and purposeful, and everyone seemed to be pulling together. And then, oh boy, it came unraveled so fast, and it just turned right back into a squabbling, hen house of a hen house full of ferrets, or a ferret house full of hens,
and me promoting my book,
and probably. Then you and they're like being funny and saying, "Hey, check out Connections."
I feel like when I tweeted about the podcast about Omnibus, you were like, "Hey, just so you know, it's just a distraction."
The thing about it, Ken, is I'm in these trying times in this economy, all I have to do, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just have to be woker than you.
That's tough, though.
I know.
That's tough.
You set the bar pretty high.
We are also at Omnibus Project on Twitter and so forth. You can hang out with your fellow futurelings on Facebook, on Reddit or Discord. Just look for the word futurelings and you'll find people complaining about something, probably. You can send us email at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. If you want to send us physical things, we have a P.O. box for that. Somebody anonymous just Amazoned us Eric Larson's book about the Battle of Britain, about the Blitz.
Oh, The Splendid and the Vile.
But I don't know who it's from because I don't think it had a little from thing in it. So,
which of us?
So please tell us who sent us this Churchill book.
What I'm impressed by, I think, is that people are realizing that I'm not the only old dad on this show. They're sending you lots of old dad stuff too.
You're older, but I'm more of a dad. I'm twice as much of a dad.
You're double dad.
Unless you have like 5 secret kids dotting the West.
Also, of the two of us, which of us is more likely to be painting figurines when they're in their 60s? I think it's you.
Are they on a railroad table? Because if they are, it's you.
I might have a model railroad.
Are they fighting orcs?
You already,
that might be me.
You already have figurines all around your desk. You have a little figurine of a man pooping right there.
Yeah, but somebody sent me this guy. Maybe this guy should be the heir to the King of Spain. Some Catalonian guy just pooping on the ground.
Oh, Christmas poop.
That's a pretty good claim.
Oh, I just got an email about this, Ken. The Splendid and the Vile was sent to us by Emily, friend and supporter of the show, and I have it right here.
She's also the director of the South Sound Reading Foundation. If you would like to support that enterprise.
South Sound Reading Foundation.
It looks like it's a literacy thing for middle schoolers, maybe? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Go to southsoundreading.org. Thank you for the book, Emily.
We'll read it together. Ken will sit on my lap and I'll read it aloud to him.
I don't know what else we got. Somebody sent us stickers for Stockton, California, but they also did not say their names. since we did the joy of cooking, Mike sent us a recipe card for banana bread, which has it's in beautiful artistic form.
Ooh la la.
The front of the postcard shows all the ingredients, and then the back has the and it says add desired amount of chocolate chips. So I'm very into this kind of banana bread.
I will come right out and say I love banana bread.
I accidentally bought grapes today at Costco when we already had grapes, and I told my wife, "Hey, just wait till they get. If we don't eat them all, just wait till they get mushy, and then make grape bread." And she did not think that was a good idea.
You even dad joke your wife?
I mentioned I only dad joke my wife.
If it weren't for the fact that you are devout and married, and your marriage is consecrated, she would have divorced you a long time ago.
Yeah, that's the only reason. If we'd just been married in front of a justice of the peace.
Yeah, if you had some Vegas wedding, it'd be split up a long time ago.
I guess I mentioned being born in May when we talked about streaking, because that was the number one song at the time of my birth. And so Julie sent me a birthday card with like a $5 bill in it, like my grandma used to.
Oh, how sweet.
And all my grandmas are dead. So in the manner of the Santa Claus, Julie, you are now my grandma.
I don't think, did I celebrate your birthday? Did I give you did I make a big cake for you that said happy birthday, Ken, and bring it to you? I'm
trying to remember. Oh, no. Instead of doing that, gifts. You did nothing.
Oh.
Now I remember.
Oh. Bummer.
You love grocery store sheet cake. Why didn't you bring me one?
I should mention that you showed up today at the bunker with a box of donuts, which was a huge hit here at Shea Roderick Robison.
You immediately carved them all into quarters to make sure everyone got to try all the donuts, and I'm a big fan of that maneuver.
Yeah, because my daughter's impulse was to start staking out which donuts were hers, and in order to just cut the baby in two, I said everybody gets a quarter of everything.
We also got a note from, I don't know if I can read the signature, Nerline?
Nerline.
That's my favorite. No, Austin.
Nerline.
It's my favorite Dolly Parton song. Maybe Austin?
Wait a minute. You can't tell whether it's Austin or Nerline.
Well, look at this. Austin/Nerline loved the de Havilland Beaver episode.
Okay.
But I think he or she also must have loved the Snow Valley episode, because he or she sent us an Oklahoma State flag. Small. Is it? I don't know. Is this against the federal flag code to fold up the Oklahoma flag and send it through the mails?
I don't think. Je me souviens.
And also some Pokemon cards.
Are we not reading these letters until we read the letters? Do we read the letters on our addenda episode available to Patreon subscribers?
Not usually physical mail. Why? What would you like to read?
Well, he says he or she, because it's unclear whether that says Nerline or Austin. Or aubergine. It says love omnibus period, best podcast, comma, but what is with the endings being so abrupt? Do we have abrupt endings?
Just kidding.
Oh, that was a pretty good one, though.
That's not the end of the episode.
It should have been the end of the episode. If we had any guts, that would have been it.
No, it would have been too abrupt. We don't like that. And neither does Nerline/Austin.
Well, Nerline has great handwriting, I will say. And I'm a fan of cool handwriting. The P's and the J's are very cool. But I think that signature says Anjou Gosek.
Anjou Gosek.
Anjou Gosek.
Thank you, Anjou, for your opinion on our endings. Oh, no, I recognize the last name. This actually says Hayden.
Oh, Hayden.
This is
Nerline, Hayden.
You can see why I would make that obvious mistake. Mm-hmm. And it's also because they don't teach kids cursive anymore in school that I cannot read this.
Oops.
No, this is the schoolmate of my son's who said he would give Dylan Pokemon cards if we recorded a show about Oklahoma ski culture.
Oh, it's that Hayden, the blackmailer.
And so, is it a blackmailer if you promise to reward someone?
Oh no, I guess you're right. But we're the ones that were victims of that extortion.
It's true. Dylan blackmailed us.
Right.
Except he doesn't have any dirt on us. He
just extorted us.
He was just annoying. It's a kind of light blackmail.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sending sending Dylan these Pokemon cards. Hayden, we will consider our business concluded.
Thank you, Hayden.
You can also, what did I not say? You can contribute to our Patreon. John mentioned the addenda episodes we've been doing once a month.
Si.
Those are available to those who give a mere pittance.
Quoi?
A mere pittance. A sou. Un écu.
Ouais. Un petit franc.
Pour le podcast.
Le centième.
I stole a loaf of bread to save my sister's son. So if you have the wherewithal to support the show, we would appreciate that. You can donate at patreon.com/omnibus project and immediately listen to I think we've done 7 of the addenda episodes.
They're so fun. They're so good. One of the nice things one of the nice things about the addenda episodes is that because Ken is the postmaster, the episodes do not have the usual one is led by Ken, then one is led by me. They're all led by Ken. And it's wonderful.
I'm consolidating my power.
Then I get to sit across the table and go, what? No way.
You're like the Count of Paris with the worst claim.
Yeah. Instead of having to sit here and go, now Hugh Capet the 17th. Ugh.
Did I also...
My brain is melted.
Did I mention our note-free Stockton, California stickers that we got? Because we also got stickers celebrating Stockton, California.
I've played a show in Stockton, California. Maybe 2 shows in Stockton, actually.
These stickers are amazing, but isn't Stockton kind of awful?
Well, it depends if you're from Stockton. I mean, Stockton puts the stock back in Stockton.
It wasn't there before?
It
was just ton?
It's cowboys, It's Americans. Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past... We have no idea how long our civilization survived. When we started this show a couple of years ago...
Like this episode?
It seemed... when we started this episode a couple of years ago, it seemed like our civilization was in jeopardy. But now...
Things are going great.
We take it all back.
2020 has been amazing.
2002 was amazing, and 2020 is
I won that Jeopardy tournament, and then everything has just gotten better and better since my term in office began.
Yep, it was great, and it was a wonderfully, it was a opportune time for Ken to become America's most celebrated trivia artist, because you're just traveling the world, making money, collecting all your accolades.
Does an importune time mean it was both important and opportune?
An importune time means, yes, that it is important, opportune, importune, and opportune.
And in poor taste.
Yes, it was importitude. It has importitude.
It was full of importitude.
Importune is a verb, isn't it?
Meaning to, beg?
Yeah. I meant opportune time. It's not an importune time. It could be a time to importune our listeners to help me get out of this now the longest episode we've ever done, although characterized by a couple of really long pauses. If this is the last Omnibus episode.
If this is the last one, we'll probably switch the order around.
We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.